Okay, welcome to those of you joining us in the recorded portion of today's lesson regarding the story of Mr. Romeri and Miss Connolly. It's found on slide number 9 of the Unit 1, The World of Law and Ethics PowerPoint, and we're just going to work through it. I'll ask questions as we go through. Feel free at any moment to type in the chat box anything that you are unclear about or would like further discussion on, or just any point you may have that you'll want to make. It's not a long story, but it sure does provide a lot of interesting things for us to talk about. And it's also a true story. So, Mr. Romeri and Miss Connolly were both divorced and in their 40s. They were young, younger than me, in their 40s when they met. When they met, Mr. Romeri had 4 children from a previous marriage, while Ms. Connolly was childless. She wanted a family, and she was in her 40s. She had a limited amount of years to have children. Mr. Romeri told her not to worry, that a fortune teller had told him he would have 2 more children. So that was very early in their courting. So the relationship progressed for more than 7 months before he told her that he had lied to her, that he was actually no longer able to have children. Miss Connolly ended the relationship and sued, claiming Romeri's deceit had led to emotional distress and depression. She claimed his actions had perhaps cost her the only chance she had to have the family that she desired. She said he lied in order to fraudulently continue the relationship with her. So let's talk about that word for a second. The word fraud. What does fraud mean? Have you heard this word? Let's talk about fraud and what fraud is, because fraud is a crime, and she's saying he committed a fraud. So what exactly does fraud mean when we say deceive and cheat? Those are interesting terms, Julian, but it's not it requires more than that. What is actually, just if you deceive someone or if you cheat someone, is that automatically fraud? What does fraud have to have? We're law and order now. We need to know what constitutes fraud, not just a general perception of we know it's when you deceive and when you cheat. What is the element that is necessary to take place that makes the deception or the cheating wrong? Wrongful or criminal deception intended to result in financial or personal gain. For personal gain, sure, but you can also do it on behalf of a business, so that you can do it so that the business gains, right? If you are lying about a car that you're trying to sell, you may not, and you're a car salesman, you may not get personal gain, but the business might, to gain something. Okay, we all have the basic understanding of what the person doing the act must do, but what about the victim? What about the victim? What's necessary for it to constitute fraud? What must their response be? Fraud is more a high stakes area, like faking sales of a company. I want to talk about the victim. Let's talk about the victim. And I think you're just overlooking this, but we want to make sure we really understand it. Well, what must the victim suffer? Or what must happen to the victim? I know this is an odd way of getting there, but the victim must believe it. Well, that could be the injury that is suffered, but the victim has to believe it. right? They have to fall for the issue. And mental health can be the injury. That can be the injury. The emotional distress can be the injury. The loss of money can be the injury if you buy something. But think about the victim. The victim has to believe the fraud. They can't say, oh, I knew it was a joke, but I did it anyway. They have to fall for it. That's a great way of expressing it, Amy. So here in our case with Mr. Romeri and Miss Connolly believed that he was in position to have 2 more children. She believed that he was capable of having children. So she's saying that the deceit led to emotional distress. And so it wasn't just that she fell for it, which she's saying she fell for his fraud. She's also saying she suffered injury. So you have to fall for it and suffer injury. She claimed his actions had perhaps cost her the only chance she had to have family. So she said he lied in order to fraudulently continue the relationship with her because she's saying he knew that if he told her the truth, she would not have continued to be involved in the relationship. She would have wanted to go find another man who could help her have a family. Now, in the Massachusetts case of Connolly versus Romeri, the court found that while Romeri had behaved unethically, it was not the court's place to punish him for his actions. Well, Mr. Romeri had certainly behaved in an unethical manner. However, under Massachusetts law, what actions Mr. Romeri had engaged in were not illegal. Conversely, if Mr. Romeri told her a series of lies to gain access to her finances, he would have been charged with fraud and arrested for sure. So let's talk about this. Why is there a difference here? Gaining access to Miss Connolly's funds would be stealing, while just misleading her in the manner he did is dishonest. So let's talk about this. Why, if he had lied to her in a way in which he would have gained access to her bank account and then taken money, how's that different? Well, do we first agree that it is different? Do we agree that it's different had he lied in such a way to gain access to her bank account, that would be different than lying to her to continue to keep a relationship ongoing? Amy says, yes, it is different. Who else says it's different? Is there somebody who doesn't think it's different? So Amy, Emily say yes. Anybody else say yes? It's different. So we all kind of have a natural sense that there's a difference here. Anybody want to try to talk about why we think there's a difference? What is the difference? Why are they both unethical? Both unethical behaviors? Why is one unethical behavior a crime? And why is the other not? Is stealing someone's heart immoral but not unethical, but stealing someone's money is? That's different. How much does a heart cost? And you could probably go online and find out the price for a heart if you need a transplant or something, right? About 40 million. Yeah, but a broken heart, right? How much do these emotions cost? So he only lied in a way that affected her emotions, whereas stealing money, you can put a price tag on the money stolen, right? How much did he steal? $500, $800? Everyone who broke my heart better pay up. That's hilarious. Yes, you'll have millions. But Holly, if people paid up for breaking your heart, would that make you whole again? Whereas if somebody stole $50 from you, if they paid you back $50, you could say I'm whole, or had to pay you $55, you could say yes, you're whole again. Whereas emotions are just much different. And imagine this situation. Um, Anytime somebody subjected somebody to bad emotions, if you could sue them for that, the courts would just be clogged and clogged and clogged with people trying to establish that they're feeling bad, their bad feelings, that their bad feelings are worth compensation. So there is a difference. Sometimes it's hard to explain what that exact difference is, but when we are suing people for damages, emotions are not going to rise to the level. And also, it's very difficult to determine if it's reasonable um, for Miss Connolly to have believed. Maybe Mrs. Smith would never have believed. But what burden is on Miss Connolly, right, to investigate? So does she have a burden? Here's somebody she's entering into a relationship with. He tells her that he believes he can have children. Is she supposed to do research into that? She's supposed to Google him online. Can Mr. Romeri still have children? What do we expect from somebody in a relationship saying these kind of things to someone? Do you see how these are all questions, and they become very difficult to bring in a court of law? And lying is just not a crime, unless, when is lying a crime? When is lying a crime? Perjury. What is perjury, Julian? Well, lying to the court, it's a step deeper than that. It's lying when you're under oath, to tell the truth. And so usually that is in the court, and lying to the court. Exactly right. So think about that. The courts are saying lying is not a crime. You're out there in the world, people have a responsibility to not fall for lies. People have a burden to not take uh, lying to heart when it affects their emotions. But if you lie to us, the court, that's going to be a crime. However, lying is also a crime when it's done with fraud. But why is the lying about your relationship status or your ability to have children not fraud, when lying to misrepresent something in order to get access to her savings account, why is that a fraud? Because it's the substance of what is stolen. Stolen feelings is not a crime, but stolen money is. So while Mr. Romeri was a jerk, while he was not a nice person, while he misled and deceived Mrs. Connolly for her emotions, it's not a crime. So as sad and as emotionally distressed as she was, she does not win legal compensation or legal recourse. However, under some circumstances, emotional distress is it can be. And as interesting as it is, as an attorney, if you, I can tell you, if you are engaging in conduct that is so outrageous, so terrible, and you're aware that the person you are doing this conduct to is suffering, they can sue you for the emotional distress and the tort. So we have crimes in the criminal justice system, and in civil law, they're called torts, T-O-R-T-S, T-O-R-T-S, torts. There, I wrote it for everyone. Is intentional infliction of emotional distress. So somebody can't sue you if you accidentally cause them tremendous grief or distress, but if you intentionally do. And so that is an ongoing pattern of intentionally harming someone's emotions, but not for the purposes of trying to have a relationship with them. So that wraps up the story of Mr. Romeri and Miss Connolly, two individuals who did not belong together. Okay, any other comments? How can people prove that they are intentional torts? Well, that's the whole question. How are you going to prove your case? How are you going to do it? Well, the facts. And so individual cases are going to differ. And the way you prove it is by convincing a jury beyond a preponderance of the evidence that the person who harmed you acted willfully or so recklessly that they should have known better. So how can people prove it? Witnesses. You call witnesses to the stand, you introduce evidence, and you make your argument. That's all the stuff we're going to be doing in mock trial. Mock trial is criminal. How do you prove that the person had the intent to kill, that it wasn't just accidental, that it isn't a lesser crime? You call witnesses, you call experts, you present evidence, and then you make the argument to the jury that you have, in fact, proved your case. In a criminal case, you have to prove it beyond reasonable doubt. That's how you do it, Alexandra. You just call those witnesses, introduce the evidence, build your case until, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you need to find the defendant sitting in that chair guilty because we've proved it beyond a reasonable doubt. Exactly. Well, what about a private investigator? Well, the private investigator does the research, interviews the people, finds the evidence, and so you have the documents, and now you can call the private investigator to the stand. Did you find out about A? Did you find out about B? Private investigator said, yes, I interviewed this person and we learned this, and so let's call that person to the stand. Do you see how the private investigator comes in? The private investigator helps you build the case you argue in the court of law. It's all pieced together, and then you tell the jury we have proved our case, while the other side says they did not prove their case. We destroyed their case. So, ladies and gentlemen of the jury, you have to find the defendant not guilty. Okay, good stuff.